Welcome back to part 2 of the offseason, you guys. So, in our last episode, we made a big trade to beef up our secondary, but we did lose a left tackle in that trade as well as a second round pick, and we did gain a 6th round pick in return. Now, in this episode, we're going to go ahead and address the entire defensive line, more secondary work, some offensive issues in this draft. We basically can't really sign anybody because we have literally no money to spend. Since all our core guys, I keep re-signing them, because I want them to be on the team. That's kind of basically the goal. Keep these guys together for as long as I possibly can until their age and all that stuff really regresses. But anyway, with that said, we're going to go ahead and get to the draft where the 49ers hold the first overall pick. And with the first overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Josh Rosen, quarterback out of UCLA. He's a freak of nature as described by my old friend that I used to know. 6'4", 216 pounds, 22 years old. He's an absolute beast out of UCLA. Has a strong arm. He can run. He can basically do everything for you. And the 49ers, they're in need of a QB. Although they did draft one named Zach Hackett. You guys remember him. He led the Niners to a victory against us the second time we played them. Don't know why they're drafting another QB, but I mean, he didn't have a very good season. It was pretty bad. So they're very quick to fire and grab another quarterback this season, in hopes that maybe he'll be the franchise guy rather than Hackett, who's only in the low 70s as his overall. With the second overall pick, the Baltimore Ravens will select Calvin Ridley, wide receiver out of Alabama. He's an absolute all-around beast, 6'1", 185 pounds, 22 years old as well. Can make all the plays. He's got good speed, good hands, good vertical, good leaping ability. He can really do everything, and I mean, anybody from Alabama is going to be pretty good. He's done well. He played with another wide receiver that he played with was Ardavius Stewart, but Calvin Ridley was the main guy, and he played all of that without really a top 10 quarterback in the college nation. Now, with the third overall pick, the New York Football Giants are gonna pick Arden Key, outside linebacker out of LSU. He's a great pass rusher. The Giants want to beef up their pass rush, and they're gonna get a humongous guy at 6'6". 236 pounds. This guy could have been a basketball player if he wanted to. But instead, they're going to get a great pass rusher. And Arden Key actually in real life did step away from football, which kind of sucks. But when I recorded this, he still wasn't stepping away from it. But yeah, New York does have Oliver Vernon as their pass rusher, a big guy that they signed. But nonetheless, this guy will help them. Now with the fourth overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings will select Christian Kirk, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. He's 5'11", has great speed, just a very agile receiver with good, strong hands. And Minnesota really needs a number 1 receiver. They drafted Laquan Treadwell. They still do have Stephon Diggs, who's pretty good, but they just need, I guess they're just trying to beef up their receiving corps. Treadwell hasn't really showed up anyways for them in this franchise series. I mean, he's sort of been on the injury list, and they hope that Kirk can be that franchise guy to solve their problems. Moving on to the 5th round pick, where the Chicago Bears, with the 5th overall pick, will select Mike McGlinchey, a left tackle out of Notre Dame. He's a pass-blocking guy, a big guy. A team like Seattle would have loved to be able to get him, but unfortunately we just wouldn't because he's such a high draft pick. An all-around good left tackle, though definitely the best one. He's 6'7", he's huge, and he'll be exactly what the Bears need to protect the blind side of whoever their QB is. I have honestly no idea. I'm pretty sure it's still Jay Cutler, though, but I would have honestly and personally have chosen a quarterback if I were Chicago, because I think that's their biggest need. But I mean, they're going to address the offensive line here, and that is, I guess, going to be helpful for them just to beef up so they can have more time to throw, and maybe that'll lower Jay Cutler's interception rate. I don't know, but hopefully it does for him, and that could leave guys like Alshon Jeffrey with more time to get open. But moving on to the 6th overall pick, the New York Jets will choose Sam Darnold as quarterback. Number 14 out of USC. This guy came absolutely out of nowhere last season in real life to lead USC to the Rose Bowl against Penn State. USC and Penn State both were teams that were not even ranked at the beginning of the season. They weren't expected to go very far, but with guys like Sam Darnold on your team, you always have a chance, especially when they have one of those feel-good stories of somebody who came out of nowhere, because the Cleveland Browns have the current USC quarterback from last year. I cannot remember his name for some odd reason. Oh, Cody Kessler, that's his name, yes. And so I guess after one season, Sam Darnold just takes over out of nowhere. But nonetheless, he's going to be hopefully a great quarterback for the Jets, and hopefully they have their franchise guy, because Ryan Fitzpatrick obviously hasn't done much for them, and the last time they drafted a QB was Geno Smith, and he hasn't done anything for them either. Moving on to the 6th overall pick, and that'll be Sam Hubbard, the big defensive tackle. The Cardinals definitely need to beef up their defensive line. They hope to get a run-stuffing guy, and he's out of Ohio State. Just another big guy that, came out of, Ohio State, because their defense is, anybody that comes out of Ohio State and is on the defensive end, they're going to be special. They're always out there making plays for their team. So hopefully for Arizona, he'll be good, and hopefully when he plays against us, he will not be good. I always want these rookies to play well and have good rookie seasons, but at the same time, not when they play against us. And they probably won't, because on the interior, our offensive line is actually pretty stout and pretty strong. But speaking of more of a Hubbard, he's more of a pretty balanced guy. He doesn't have insane speed. There you see it's 80 overall. So he can pass rush. He can get you sacks. He's sort of like a Joey Bosa, but on a poor man's level. Well, let's now move on to the 8th overall pick, which would be Saquon Barkley, running back out of Penn State. Another one of those guys that can make plays for you all the time. Indianapolis needs to beef up their running game. Obviously, no Frank Gore. He has retired for them. So they definitely need to improve that. And the way you can do that is by drafting a running back early. And Saquon Barkley is obviously the answer for them right now. He was a great running back at Penn State. Had good rushing yards, good stats. Played very well all season long and was definitely considered a top 10 pick. And that's why the Colts are going to take him, beefing up their running back position. And hopefully Andrew Luck will be able to do more and have less weight and pressure taken off of his shoulders with a guy like him. Because, they like to throw the ball around a lot. They have a pretty decent offensive line, especially the left side of their O-line is pretty good. But that right side could still use work. But they're going to improve the skill position, and that's honestly what they need. He's 5'11", 222 pounds. He can bulldoze you and has great speed as well. Moving on to the 9th overall pick is Tyquan Lewis for the Philadelphia Eagles. Another pass rusher out of Ohio State. How many more can you get? He's 6'3", and around 250 pounds. 21 years old, 22 actually. Very young, but nonetheless, he's going to be perfect, I think, for the Eagles. They need pass rushers. They have Fletcher Cox. They have Vinnie Curry. I'm trying to remember Brandon Graham. They have a whole bunch of guys that can play, but you can never have enough pass rushers. That is an obvious thing for us, the Seahawks, as you guys saw earlier. Frank Clark, Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett, all those guys made huge plays. All of them had sacks. Jaron Reed. It doesn't matter. You can always have guys subbing in and always bringing pressure on the quarterback, and that can relieve a secondary stress. Let's move on to the 10th overall pick, which is going to go to the Atlanta Falcons. And with that pick, they're going to select James Washington, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. We all know who Julio Jones is, and we all know what kind of a player he can be. A game changer, but just like Calvin Johnson in Detroit, you can always have somebody to relieve stress from you and make sure that you don't have too much attention on one guy. A guy like James Washington, he's got pretty good height, pretty good speed, can catch the ball, he's got strong hands, and that can help complement Julio Jones and take more pressure off of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, which can free him up. So instead of him being double teamed every play, now you have to focus on another guy, and that can help Atlanta really produce a much better passing offense than it already is. As if they can get better. Like this season in real life, their offense was unstoppable, so this is just beefing up now. It can almost be unfair on cornerbacks now. Especially if James Washington can develop into a beast, then you might have to start doubling two guys at the same time, and that is not what anybody wants to do. Moving on to the 11th overall pick, it will be Minkah Fitzpatrick. The Miami Dolphins need to beef up their secondary, and for those of you that have ever watched Alabama play, you know their defense was absolutely killing it this season. Record-setting all across the board, unstoppable. You couldn't do anything on them. And Minkah Fitzpatrick was a huge contributor to that. He's 6'1", 201 pounds, 22 years old as well. A great lockdown cornerback. Although, Miami better hope that he's not going to be a bust like Dee Milner was out of Alabama, because that's the last Alabama corner that went in the first round, as far as I can remember, in my own mind. But, Miami does have Byron Maxwell on their team, so adding another cornerback to complement him will definitely help them out a lot. And hopefully Miami can play better on the secondary. We know their offense can be pretty good with Jarvis Landry, Ryan Tannehill, and Jay Ajayi running things, as well as wide receiver Devontae Parker, who's coming along pretty well. Their defensive pass rush is absolutely great with Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake. Now, with the 12th overall pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to select Cameron Sutton, wide receiver out of SMU. This is a guy that they're going to need because, as you guys saw earlier, There's no more Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh, so you already know that they really don't have anybody else. I mean, maybe Martavis Bryant could be their guy, but they still need to draft someone, and he's 6'4". He can be a every down run wide receiver and a big target and a true #1 receiver as long as he develops well. So this is a guy and a great pick by Pittsburgh in my opinion. I think that, his name was Cortland Sutton, but I think that he can develop for them, and Ben Roethlisberger definitely has a guy that he can throw to as his years are like coming down. I don't know how much longer he's going to play in this franchise, but if Pittsburgh is going to want a Super Bowl, they're going to have no slippage. Now, this is my favorite pick so far in the draft, because I personally love this guy. The Detroit Lions, with the 13th overall pick, will select Budda Baker, free safety out of Washington. I've watched a lot of Husky football games this season, and Budda Baker is an absolute freak. He is like a Earl Thomas and a Cam Chancellor combined. Hard hitter, great ball skills, good zone. Play recognition could improve a little bit, but I mean, that comes with every single rookie. Their awareness, the way they know the speed of the game, it will always be different for them, and I think that Budda Baker is going to be a beast in the NFL in real life. I didn't even know he was going in the draft this year in real life, so I assumed that he'd be staying for one more season, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. He's going to be a Detroit Lion, and hopefully the Lions make good use of him by starting him. There you guys see he's going to be 82 overall. So I actually went ahead and lowered his stats just a tiny bit, because I mean, they seemed unfair. But anyway, with the 14th overall pick, the Tennessee Titans will select wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster out of USC, another beast player. He's got great speed. He was a returner for them as well, has good hands, and can be an all-around player. And Marcus Mariota, he needs another target. They already have Delaney Walker, who's their best receiving threat, but he's a tight end. Adding a speedy wide receiver who has good height and is 6'2", 219 pounds can definitely help them. Juju Smith-Schuster is a senior this season, which is why he's going to be 24 years old. But nonetheless, maybe a little more experience will help him out in the long run, playing with a young quarterback like Marcus Mariota. But anyway, you guys, that is pretty much going to be wrapping it up for this part 1 of this draft. Part 2 of the offseason in total. I will be dropping the other part right now, like after this video. So if you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment. God bless every single one of you guys, and I'm out.